Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Saturdays in Stores podcast brought to you right here on the Crossover Media Network. My name is Kanaye, and today we have to talk about a UConn loss at Xavier and a home win against DePaul. Thankfully, they were able to overcome that 14-point deficit to DePaul because that would have been a really, really bad loss. And I think the overall tone of this episode would be a lot different than probably how it's going to end up being. But there's also a big time game against Marquette coming up Saturday night. So I'll do a quick preview on that just to take a look ahead for that matchup. Before we get into that, if you like this podcast, if you like any of the other content you see on the Crossover channel, whether it's NBA, which I know Josh and the other guys are going to start pumping out a lot more of that content, please subscribe, like, comment. We like seeing what you guys have to say about our videos. And please tell other people about it. It all helps with the algorithm on YouTube, which is key for driving content. So without wasting any more time, let's talk about the Xavier loss first. So UConn lost 76-72 at Xavier at the Cintas Center in Cincinnati, Ohio. This is a game that I said I very much see being a trap game, and it very much was. I believe, from what I've heard from Robbie Hummel, who covered the game, he was saying that the students were out there long before Hurley or any of the other players were out there warming up and getting shots up before the game. And if you watch the game itself, it was just an electric atmosphere at the Cintas Center. I give a lot of credit to the Xavier fans, the students. The student section was rowdy. I'm sure they were all pretty tipsy. But yeah, they got loud for their guys, and that's a tough place to play. And a lot of guys on this UConn team this year haven't necessarily been in a position where they've had to play on some of those big stages the way they had to against Xavier last Saturday night. Of course, Caravan's been in those moments. DR has from time to time, but not as a starting point guard. It's new for guys like Solo and Stu, Aiden Mahaney. Even though he played at the Kennel and when he was at St. Mary's, whenever they had to go play at Gonzaga. But again, this is a young team. A lot of guys who didn't play much last year or are in completely different roles than what they were doing last year. It's an adjustment to have to step into an atmosphere the way the Cintas Center was on Saturday night, and I give UConn a lot of credit. There were several points throughout the game where Xavier went up 9, 10, 11 points, and it looked like Xavier was going to blow the game wide open and just take off from there, but they were able to answer a lot. I think a lot of that had to do with Hurley trusting Diarra with 2 fouls and letting him play through that in the mid part of the first half, the middle section of it. Just because I think when he got out of it, when he was taken out of the game with the 2 fouls, they just seemed to collapse. They didn't have that strong perimeter defender, and just on offense, they looked lost. They didn't have their floor general, their starting point guard out there to kind of settle things down and get guys their shots that they needed. But I have a tough time deciding how I feel about how they played defensively against Xavier. There are definitely stretches where they look strong. And I think I do have an optimistic mindset about seeing the way they defended Ryan Conwell as opposed to how they defended him when Xavier came to the XL and UConn got that OT win. Ryan Conwell lit them up in that game. I think he had 22 or 23 points. He only had 4 this time around. And I understand other guys got going, like Dalen Swain, who I'm going to touch on in a little bit, and Zach Fremantle, who didn't play in that first matchup this year. But, I give a lot of credit. I think they kind of came out and said, we're not going to let Ryan Conwell, who probably is their best perimeter shot maker, just with what he's able to do off the dribble and creating his own shot from the perimeter. And he's just a great player, really big transfer pickup for that Xavier program. But I think they were in the mindset where we're not going to let Ryan Conwell win this game for Xavier, and we're going to force other guys to have to make shots. And, they did. So I guess that's a good time to talk about Dalen Swain. Dalen Swain in this game, Dalen Swain has played a lot better for Xavier as of recent than he did to start the season. He started in this ball game, he had 15 points, and was 6 for 7 from the floor. And I just think he completely took advantage of Jalen Stewart. He was able to get to the painted area and get off that kind of shot where he's able to elevate and kind of do that little push shot Almost similar to what we saw from Oso Ighodaro last year, but obviously different player, different skill set. But Dalen Swain looked very comfortable going to that shot. He did that multiple times, was able to draw the foul on Stewart multiple times as well. And I mean, yeah, this UConn team, they continue to foul a lot in this game. Xavier shot 24 free throws. UConn shot 17. So free throw discrepancy wasn't crazy, unlike some other games this year. But again, it's they need to be better defensively, and they have to be more disciplined when it comes to fouling. I've said this so much this year, but I mean that's really the theme for this season. Um, if they legitimately want to go on a deep run in March, there were definitely times where they looked lost when playing defense in transition against Xavier's fast break, where um, there were times where Aiden Mahaney, especially after he made that one shot going into the half, he kind of looked to the bench, celebrated a little bit, and ended up leading to, I want to say Dante Maddox it was, who made the buzzer beater from the little short corner jump shot. But yeah, him, Jalen Stewart, uh, Jaden Ross, there were times where they looked lost when guarding the fast break, and they can't do that. It's those are free points they're giving up. Xavier scored a lot in transition in that game, and it's just going to hurt you so much going forward. And especially you can't do that against Marquette Saturday. That's going to be key. They need to improve just their defense. It's their defense. Everyone knows how bad UConn's defense is this year. If they want to, I understand they're missing a guy who makes them a top 80 defense on Cat Bum, which is still not good. But they need to get better. But yeah, and just I think what hurts too is they kind of needed to get a lot out of Aiden in this game offensively, and which kind of leads to, of course, I think most people would agree Aiden's gotten better on the defensive side. He's played a lot tougher. He fights a lot more on that side of the ball, but he's still not. I don't think you're still not comfortable having Aiden out there when you need to get stops. And I think just there were lineups in that game where we saw Solo Ball, Hassan Diar, and Aiden Mahaney all playing at one time. That's just I feel like that's just a nightmare lineup, defensively speaking. Just with all those short guards, it's tough. And Xavier, just the size of their backcourt, they got great wing players and guys who kind of filter in between playing the two, the three, I think, yeah, I mean, they were just able to take advantage of that and abuse it. So yeah, they need to improve defensively. Some of that's just related to roster makeup, and you kind of can't do much. You have to do what you can with what you have. So hopefully McNeely coming back will help that a little bit. Just to touch on McNeely's status a little bit. It's been so up in the air. I have literally no clue. I think most people believe he's going to play Saturday at Marquette. I've heard he's looked good in shoot around. He shot around before the Xavier game, and I believe he did once again at DePaul. I was really hoping he was going to be ready for that DePaul game just to get a game under his belt, especially in a matchup where, well, at least going into the game, I expected you're not going to really have to worry too much about it being close. But obviously, I'll get into that because that really wasn't the case for a good portion of the game. But yeah, I think they're going to need him to beat Marquette. Right now, as it is, I don't see UConn the way they're playing right now as good enough to beat Marquette. So I think they need McNeely back, even if the shot's a little rusty coming back. Just someone who they can run actions through where he's able to get to that two on one going into the basket and make the decision to make that pass or go up with it himself. I think he's just so good at doing that, and just the actions they're able to run with him. And then again, I've mentioned it several times on this podcast that Lee McNeely somehow rated their top rated defender on this UConn roster this year, which again, from the eye test, you don't think he's a very good defender, but the analytics say differently. So, hey, if that's what it is, then cool. And sure, yeah, I think it's pretty evident that we need McNeely back both offensively and defensively, just what he brings on both sides. Just talk a little bit about how UConn played offensively against Xavier. There was a lot of there were definitely points of concern, especially with Hassan. Only 4 assists in this game, probably the lowest assist total in a game where he's seen fairly decent. I mean, I understand the foul trouble is probably a factor in that. 5 for 8 from the floor, but he made some inadvertent passes. There was one where he tried swinging it to Solo on the wing. It was just a lazy kind of lollipop pass and got picked off, led to a Xavier fast break score. There's another instance where he's a little too lax handling the ball at the top of the key, and it got stripped and led to another Xavier fast break layup. So it's just something I feel like you wouldn't expect to see from Hassan. So that's someone who I think I mean I still do, but I would argue most Husky fans trust more than anyone else on the team when it comes to handling the basketball and being the distributor. I mean, to be fair, he kind of is the only guy that's capable of doing that right now. But yeah, Hassan needs to be better when it comes to that, and you'd like to see him knock down some more of these open looks he got. He got some good looks against Xavier, but he couldn't knock him down. He did hit 1 3, but yeah, he's not Tristan Newton. He doesn't bring the dynamic of being able to late in the shot clock kind of create something on his own where he's able to go to the basket or able to get into a position where he can step back, hit a 3 point shot, or dish it out. I mean, he could dish it out, but he does a fair job in being able to get to the lane, but he's not great at drawing fouls the way Newton was. And again, some of that comes with the height limitations, and it is what it is. But yeah, it wasn't a terrible game from Hassan, but definitely just the turnovers. I think those two turnovers hurt a lot in the moment, and I think if those don't happen, then maybe this game goes a little bit more differently. In terms of Alex Caravan, I'm also going to talk a little bit about how he played in the DePaul game, but he wasn't very good in this game. He was 1 for 6 from three, 4 for 13 from the floor, and I think he is still battling the ankle injury he sustained in the Creighton game, where he stayed and played the rest of the game, and he hasn't missed a game since. But I think that is kind of nagging at him, and I think just it's a lot tougher now because with McNeely out, now he doesn't have other fours guarding him. And so he's not able to kind of get some of those mismatches where he's able to run off of screens and hit shots and get open the way he is when McNeely is playing, because now they're able to kind of throw that four that on Jalen Stewart since he's been starting. And now you have probably for the most part, it's been athletic wings who are guarding Alex Caravan, and that's just a tough matchup for him. In terms of him being able to get open, run off screens, and hit his shots. And I think Xavier did a really, really good job in being able to blow up a lot of UConn's actions in this game. I think that was really key for Xavier. UConn was struggled a lot, especially late in the game, and being able to get to their actions and get into their sets. And it's just that's what I think ultimately dictated this game. In terms of Jaden Ross and Jalen Stewart, you really didn't get anything out of either of those guys. Terrace Reed was also not very much of a factor. I think Samson Johnson played a great ball game. He had 12 points, 11 boards, came out of nowhere on 3 separate occasions, was able to get a block where it looked like Xavier had an easy layup. So a lot of credit goes to Samson Johnson that game. He fought, played 31 minutes. He's one of the guys, him and Hassan. I think I see those guys as kind of the heart and soul of this basketball team. And yeah, I mean, Samson's a fighter. I understand he has his moments where he has an ugly turnover or takes a shot and he probably shouldn't. But just I think the dynamic of what he brings as an athlete is so important to what UConn is able to do when they are successful. And he played a really great ball game. So a lot of credit goes to Samson Johnson for how he played. Solo ball in this ball game started off really, really hot. He had 3 3-pointers, I want to say, in the first half, I think it was. He ended with 20, but that second half, he kind of got cold. He had so many great looks and just they couldn't find the bottom of the net. I mean, every time he shoots, it looks like it's going in. The shot's pure, but it's unfortunate. I think UConn was able to get a lot of the shots, specifically that one where there was 20-ish seconds left and they swung it to the corner. Solo had a chance to – he had an open look from the corner to take the lead while UConn was down 2. And I'm taking that shot 100 times out of 100 if I'm Solo. You just have to live with the result. It is what it is. Didn't go in, and UConn lost. But I'm fine. I'm fine with that shot. I think they were able to get that. And then next time around, I think they ideally wanted to get Aiden Mahaney going to his right off a DHO, but Xavier was able to blow that up, and it ended up leading to Jaden Ross having no choice but to take a tough shot and from the mid range, and it was too late before the shot clock went off. So it is what it is. Just to touch really briefly on Aiden Mahaney in this game, I think this is a really important game for him. He played really well in that first half. 3 assists, 3 boards, ended with 14 points. I think the highlight was him hitting those 2 threes back to back late in the first half, where shot clock was expiring. He hit nearly a logo three to beat the shot clock, so that was huge. And then he came down. He was able to um, get off a screen, lead to a pull up jump shot from three, and he hit that as well. Of course, like I mentioned, he kind of turned to the bench, celebrated a little bit, which led to him giving up a buzzer beater shot to Dante Maddox in the short corner. But I think it was really good to see Aiden UConn and just Dan Hurley seeing this as a game where Xavier's going to try to blow up a lot of UConn's action. So they kind of needed someone who's able to go and get their own shot to be able to do that. And they used Aiden Mahaney in pick and roll a lot and allowed him to kind of make decisions, whether to dump it down, whether it's Terrace Reed or Samson Johnson, whoever's setting the screen. And he was also able to score. He was able to get to the rim and, of course, hit some shots here and there from the perimeter. But I think that's something they need to look to do more of, getting Aiden Mahaney in these pick and roll actions. Last year at St. Mary's, he was, as the ball handler in the pick and roll, he was in the 80th, I believe, percentile of ball handlers in the pick and roll, and that's what he does best. He's really really good at being able to get downhill off a screen, go look for his own shot. And he's not the greatest passer, but he was able to throw some nice passes against Xavier. But I think that's something you need to look for him to do more of. And he was able to do a little bit in the DePaul game. I mean, I'd argue this is probably the best 2 game stretch he's had this season so far, between the Xavier game and DePaul. But yeah, I think that was good for Aiden. That's a guy who needs to continue to build his confidence. I think there's been several points throughout the year where his confidence has been completely shot. But just to see him kind of grow a little bit, and I think Hurley's starting to understand how to play Mahaney at points. But uh, obviously, because the point guard experiment didn't work out. But I think he's starting to finally carve out a role for himself on this team. So that's good to see. But I think that pretty much covers everything I had about the Xavier game. Moving over to the DePaul game, UConn thankfully was able to win 72-61. They went down pretty big in the first half, 14-point deficit at one point. It's not a good look. I mean, there were points in that first half where UConn couldn't get anything going. They just looked so sloppy. It almost looked like you were watching a JV basketball game out there. And I mean, they need to come out hot. I understand DePaul is not a great opponent, only one winning conference play this year. But you can't play down to your level of competition. That's something that last year's team didn't do. And like Hurley mentioned, this team really, really lacks the killer instinct. I think missing Liam McNeely kind of contributes to that. He's a guy that has drawn Cam Spencer comparisons, including from myself. I just think the energy he brings, it's important. And UConn doesn't have that when he's not playing. And even when he is playing at times, they lack that killer instinct. But they can't do that against Marquette on Saturday night. Marquette's one of the best teams in the country. They're a Final Four caliber team, and it's at Pfizer Forum. They can't come out cold. They need to start hot. They need to lock in both defensively, offensively. And I mean, it was a really ugly first half. They went into the locker room down 7. I'm sure Hurley lit them up in the locker room, but they were to come back and go on a run, and they ultimately won by 11 points. So that's good. I think a big part of that was a spark that Solo Ball had, and that's early in the second half where he had back-to-back and ones. One was a 3 where he got fouled, and then another he was going to the basket and got fouled. He was able to make that too. I just think Solo Ball was crucial in this game. Really, he was able to just the shot making ability he has. He was able to get to the mid range once again, like he has been doing fairly recently, and he was able to knock down some of those shots. That was good to see. Jalen Stewart played a great offensive game, 6 for 7 from the floor, knocked down 3 threes, 15 points. He ended with 4 boards as well. On top of that, again, there's so much offensive upside with Jalen Stewart. You just hope that he continues to grow defensively and improve on his consistency on offense. I think that's the goal for him and for Jaden Ross. You'd like to see him try to, again, I still really believe that he can be a legitimate, like, high caliber 3-and-D type of guy. He needs to improve with the consistency and confidence in the shot. I think the form is good. He just needs to see the ball go through the net a little bit more. And I think that's going to do so much for his confidence and his overall game. Aside from that, I I'm a little confused. Why Jacob Meyer didn't start in this game. He played really well against UConn when um, UConn played at DePaul, but he came off the bench in this game, only didn't score actually. So I credit to the defense they played on him. But Leighton Blocker, he played a really great ball game, 18 points for him. That's a guy who's really good, I think. And just DePaul not being a very competitive program, I think kind of takes away from how good of a player he is. But that's a guy who I think is going to be a really good player, and already has shown signs of that. But yeah, they. I mean, I think the overall takeaway from that game is they need to they can't come out soft. They need to come in with that blue collar mentality that the teams of the last 2 years have had, and they need to play tough. They can't roll over the way they did in that first half against DePaul because I mean Marquette's not going to let that fly. So um, in terms of just everyone else, I think the only other two notable players in this game were Terrace Reed and Aiden Mahaney. Alex Caravan didn't play a great game. I think the ankle is still bothering him, and just Liam not being there and kind of forcing some of the matchup problems for Caravan on offense just kind of contributes to him not playing as well as you'd like to see him play. Didn't make a three in this game, missed all six of his attempts, but Terrace Reed played a really great game, especially that second half. Played 24 minutes, 6 for 8 from the floor, hit shots at the line, and I just think he brought that toughness. Yeah, I mean that transition dunk he had where he took it coast to coast off the steal. That was really cool to see. That was sick, and I hope Terrace can do a little bit more of that. And you just look for Terrace to, again, I think from time to time you still see the concerns about the turnovers and being able to process the game a little bit faster is kind of what he needs to do. But that's a guy who I've so much belief in going, especially going into next year, where I think he can be closer to what I think this coaching staff and most Husky fans believe him to be on, kind of like a Adama Sanogo type of trajectory. I think he's fully capable of doing what Adama Sanogo was able to do for UConn 2 years back. So I'm definitely excited to see Terrace next year. And hopefully he can continue to improve and maybe start getting closer to that point this year. This game was definitely a step in the right direction and played a really tough second half. So that was nice to see. Aiden Mahaney in this game wasn't very efficient, but he had good moments where he was able to get to the rim. He was able to knock down a three at one point as well. It's tough because a lot of the open looks that I think he gets, he maybe thinks a little bit too much. I think that, again, comes back to his confidence, being a little shaky at times. So I hope he can find that and be able to knock down some of these open looks he's getting more frequently than what he has been doing. But I think that pretty much covers everything I had to take away about the DePaul game. Again, thank God they were able to come out with the win because this episode would be completely different if they weren't able to. And I mean, hey, I give a lot of credit to the DePaul program. They are getting a lot better. I understand they only have one win in conference play, but one win is more than what they've had the last 2 years in the Big East. So good on them. And I think they're actually on the right path of becoming competitive again, hopefully. Just because of course, you want to beat these teams, but you like to see the level of competition in the Big East increase than what we've seen this year. But yeah, the basketball's better. College basketball's better when the Big East is good head to toe, and I hope in years to come that it starts to move in that direction. So just to preview Marquette, this is Marquette is ranked ninth in the AP poll last I checked, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. UConn is ranked 25th. They fell from 19th to 25th after Xavier lost, which is understandable. A lot of people think that UConn shouldn't be ranked right now. Kind of torn on how I feel about it. I think with McNeely, they are deserving of being a ranked team, and I don't think their losses are particularly bad losses. The Villanova game was a trap. Creighton, the loss at home, not ideal. I'd argue that was a bad loss. But at the same time, they didn't have Ryan Kalkbrenner beat them. It was really Jemiah Neal, and that was a little bit unexpected. The Xavier game, I don't think was a bad loss either. Again, I mentioned how insane that atmosphere was. That crowd was amped up from wire to wire, full game. And Xavier's a good team. They have great shot makers. Zach Fremantle's really good. I understand he's had problems with injuries. David McKnight as well. But when they're all healthy, they're a good team. They're definitely tournament caliber. I understand their Big East conference record isn't great right now, but I definitely think they could end up making a run to getting a bid into the tournament. So don't be shocked if Xavier is able to do that. But yeah, getting back to Marquette. Shaka Smart, I give a lot of credit to him. Every year, I feel I don't understand why he chooses not to go into the portal, and sometimes it looks like his rosters going into the year aren't as good as they could be. But he's figured it out. I think he's all in on the player development there at Marquette, and it's panned out greatly. I believe Stevie Mitchell just had his career high the other night. Cam Jones, obviously playing at an All-American level, definitely the Wood Award conversation. Of course, I think that's Broom versus Flag for the most part. But Cam Jones has really elevated his play last year. I mean, that's a guy who scored 17 a game last year, even while playing with Oso Gadaro and Tyler Kolek last year. He came back, had Marquette's first triple-double since Dwayne Wade early in the season, played really well in their out-of-conference scheduling. He's played well in the Big East so far. I really don't know how UConn is going to defend Cam Jones, if I'm being honest. I would think Hassan Diarra gets the assignment. But, I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily a guy you can shut down. I think you try to contain him as best as you can and don't let the other guys hit shots and beat you that way. Just because, if those guys get hot, then you're in a bad spot. David Joplin's a really good player at the 4 who could pose some problems for Alex Caravan. Chase Ross has played well recently. Ben Gold, I've talked about it on the Crossover U podcast, where he's kind of finally starting to get to the point of being the caliber of player that me and many other people have thought we've kind of been waiting on seeing that growth from Ben Gold. He's kind of finally starting to get to that point this year. So that's good for him, good for Marquette, obviously. But UConn, again, like any other game in the Big East, really, they can't come out cold. They need to come in locked in. They need to bring the intensity and toughness on defense, and they need to pray McNeely is good to go, because I really don't know how UConn wins this game without McNeely. They need him back desperately. Just what they're able to do, and having a guy who's comfortable handling the ball even as a forward, and he's a guy that's so good when going to the rim and that 2-on-1 in the lane, and just he makes the right decision almost every time, and he's mature beyond his years for a freshman, and he's come as advertised in the games he's played. But yeah, I think that those are the goals for the game. I think you want to see continued growth from Jay Stu and Jay Ross, Mahaney as well. Hassan, I think try to clean up some of the turnovers. He doesn't turn the ball over a lot. Just at the end of the Xavier game was a little bit of a fluke. Just hope he doesn't get in foul trouble, because they're going to need him for this game, guarding Cam Jones for probably the entire game, honestly. But yeah, I think hopefully Alex Caravan, the ankle's all good, and he's ready to go for Marquette on date of this recording. It's Friday, so tomorrow night. But yeah, I think that pretty much takes care of everything I have for this episode. Again, please, if you like this podcast or anything else you see on this channel, subscribe. We like seeing your comments about the takes we have, so please put any thoughts you have in the comments. Tell other people about it. All helps with the algorithm on YouTube. And I'm a little up in the air. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll try to put out a reaction video on Sunday for this Marquette game. If not, then it'll come next Saturday. But until the next episode, I will see you all next time.